"Show me something real," the film star said, loud enough for 300 guests to hear, "or admit your set dressing." Then he put his palm flat on my friend's chest and shoved. I was standing 8 feet to the left of Corporal Wren Halloran that night, on the marble inside the east colonnade of Ashford House, and I watched the whole thing the way you watch a stone you've thrown leave your hand, already knowing it's too late to call it back, already braced for where it has to land. Halloran did not move. The shove rocked him back onto his heels and forward again, and the bearskin barely swayed, and his eyes stayed level on the far wall the way they are trained to, and the film star laughed and turned to the cameras as if he had proven a point. He had proven a point. Just not the one he thought. My name is Sergeant Tomas Vane, and I have stood beside Wren Halloran for 4 years on the cold mornings and the long nights, and there are perhaps 3 living men who know what I am about to tell you. The man the film star shoved that night was, until he walked away from all of it, the most decorated combatives champion this country has ever sent abroad. He could have folded that star like a deck chair before the laugh left his mouth. He chose, instead, to stand there and take it, and what he did with the second shove is the thing the whole room is still talking about. But I am ahead of myself. Let me put you in the colonnade. The occasion was the Founders' Gala, an annual evening Ashford House throws to raise money for the Veterans Fund, the old soldiers, the ones with the bad lungs and the worse pensions, the ones nobody films. The long hall had been opened, the chandeliers lit, the marble waxed until it threw the candlelight back up at the ceiling. We had a guest of honor that year, a man whose face was on 100 posters across the Capitol, the lead of a fighting films franchise that had made him rich enough to forget how money worked. I will call him the Star, because that is all he was that night, not a name, just a wattage. He moved through the room trailed by a permitted crew, 2 cameras, a sound man, and a publicist who never stopped smiling and never once looked happy. I had drawn the colonnade post with Halloran, 2 sentries flanking the inner doors, ceremonial, still as the pillars we stood between. Our job that night was simple: be the picture, be the thing the guests photograph and the thing the donors remember, the discipline they are buying a piece of when they write the check. Stand. Do not react. Let the gala flow around you like a river around a post sunk in the bed. The Star found us around the second hour when the speeches were done and the wine had loosened the room, and he found us the way a bored man finds a wall to lean on. He stopped in front of Halloran first, looked him up and down, and I felt the evening change its weight, the way the air changes before weather. "Look at this," he said to his crew, to the half-circle of guests already drifting in with their phones up. "The famous discipline, the statues." He waved a hand at the bearskin, the red wool, the white gloves. "You know they train these boys to stand still. That's the whole act. They stand still." He grinned. "I do my own stunts. I've taken hits from men twice this size, and you're telling me this is what discipline looks like, standing there." Halloran looked at the far wall. "It is the right thing to do. It is the only thing to do. A sentry on a ceremonial post does not banter, does not bristle, does not give a heckler the reaction that turns him from a fool into a story. The training is to be the river post. Let it flow past." And Halloran was the best river post I ever stood beside, because his stillness was not effort. On most men you can see the cost of holding the jaw, the throat, the small war behind the eyes. On Halloran there was no war. He had emptied that room out years ago. He stood there like a man waiting for a bus he was in no hurry to catch. That, of course, is exactly what enraged the Star. Contempt feeds on a reaction. Give it nothing and it has to escalate to feed itself. "Movie set discipline," he said, and the phrase pleased him so much he said it again, louder for the cameras. "That's what this is. Fake, choreographed. You'd fall apart the second something real touched you." He stepped closer, close enough that I saw the publicist's smile tighten at the corners. "I've worked with real fighters, real ones. You can tell the difference in a second. The real ones have it in the eyes. You," he leaned in until his face was a hand's width from Halloran's, You've got nothing in the eyes, you're a coat hanger in a hat. The crowd laughed, not all of them, but enough. There is always an enough. I want you to understand what I felt at that post, because it is the heart of this whole night. I felt the old heat come up the back of my neck, the soldier's heat, the one that wants to step across and put a stop to it. I have felt it 100 times and put it down 100 times, and that is the job. But standing there, knowing what I knew about the man beside me, the heat was joined by something almost like pity. Pity for the star. Because he had walked up to a sleeping thing and was poking it with a stick, and he had no idea, none, that the stick was the only thing keeping him standing. Then he said the thing that I think he had been building to all along, the thing that would play well on a clip. "Tell you what," the star said, spreading his arms to the crowd. "Let's test it, real against fake. I'll throw a punch, pull it, don't worry, I won't hurt the merchandise, and let's see the famous discipline hold." He turned back to Halloran. "Or do you only stand still when nobody's swinging?" And he put his palm on Halloran's chest and shoved. I have replayed that shove more times than I can count, and here is what I know. It was not a tap. The star trained for his films. Whatever else he was strong, and he put real weight behind it, the heel of his hand driving up under the breastbone the way you would shove a man you meant to move. On a guest, on a tourist, that shove would have put someone on the marble. On Halloran it bought a 1/4 inch of sway and nothing else. He rocked and he settled, and his eyes never left the far wall, and the bearskin barely nodded, and the star stepped back into the applause of his own crew like a man who had landed a stunt. "See," he said, "took it like a mannequin because that's what he is." I watched Halloran breathe once slow through his nose. For years I had stood beside him and I knew that breath. It was not anger. Anger would have been easier to forgive. It was the breath of a man deciding how little to do. Because here is the thing the star did not know, the thing nobody in that colonnade knew except me. The man he had just shoved had spent 15 years learning exactly how a body moves when it is pushed, how to take a force 4 times that hard and give it back to the floor, how to turn another man's strength into the thing that sat him down gently in a chair. He had a wall of medals in a box his mother kept. He had stood on the highest platform a fighting man in this country can stand on, with a flag going up for him, before any of us had heard the star's name. And he was about to be shoved a second time. I could see it coming in the star's face, the greed of a man who has gotten a laugh and wants the bigger one. I could see it, and I could not stop it, and some cold, honest part of me did not want to. Let me tell you who Ren Halloran was before he was a coat hanger in a hat, because the second shove makes no sense without it. I learned it by accident 2 winters ago, on a night neither of us could sleep and the duty room was empty. We were drinking the bad coffee the urn makes after midnight, and I made some joke about how the lads in the gym thought they were tough, and Halloran went quiet in a particular way, and then he told me, not boasting. He has never once boasted in 4 years about anything. He told me the way a man tells you where he buried something plain, because it had stopped mattering, and he trusted me to let it stay buried. He had been a grappler. Started as a boy in a cold hall above a hardware shop, a coach who smelled of liniment and would not let him quit. By 19, he was winning the things you win when you are the best in your weight in the country. By 22, he was being sent abroad, and abroad he kept winning the open mat tournaments, the combatives championships, the services run between nations, the ones where there is no audience but men who know exactly what they are watching and no prize but the right to be called the best. He had stood on the top of that podium 3 times. He had a photograph, he said, of the flag going up, and he could not look at it, because the boy under the flag had thought it would feel like arriving somewhere, and it had only felt like the end of the climbing. Then what? I had asked him. Then nothing, he said. I'd done it. There wasn't another rung, and I looked around at the men who'd stopped being able to do anything else, the ones who could only fight, who got mean when they couldn't, and I thought, I don't want the mat to be the only thing I'm good at when I'm 50. He turned his coffee in his hands. I wanted to do something that asked me to be still. The whole sport had taught me to explode. I wanted to learn the other half. So he had walked away from the platforms and the photographs and put on the red wool, and he had become the best river post I ever stood beside, and almost nobody knew, because he never told them, because the telling was a kind of needing them to know that he had cut out of himself like a bad tooth. That was the man the star shoved the second time. It came exactly as I had read it. The star, fed by the laugh, stepped in and brought his palm up again, harder, a real shove this time with the shoulder behind it, the kind that means it, and I think, looking back, that some part of him wanted Halloran to fall, wanted the statue to topple so the clip would have its money shot, the disciplined fraud knocked off his pedestal by the real man, the action hero. What happened instead I have tried to describe to a dozen people, and I always fail, because it happened in the space of a breath and there was nothing to see. That is the whole point. There was nothing to see. Halloran did not brace. Bracing is what an untrained man does, and it is how you get hurt. The force hits a stiff thing and the stiff thing breaks or goes over. Halloran did the opposite of bracing. As the palm landed, he let his chest yield by exactly the inch it needed, a half-turn at the hips that I have only ever seen in men who have spent their lives on a mat, and the star's shove, all that committed weight, all that meaning it, went sliding past into empty air. The star's own force, with nothing to push against, carried him forward off his balance. He stumbled. One foot crossed the other. For one ugly instant the action hero, the man who did his own stunts, was falling on the waxed marble in front of 300 people and 2 cameras. And Halloran caught him. That is what almost nobody understood in the moment, what only became clear later when the slow footage went around. The hand that had been a white glove at Halloran's side came up, not in a strike, never in a strike, and took the star lightly by the upper arm, a grip like a father steadying a child on ice, and set him back on his feet, square, steady, unhurt. It took perhaps a second. Halloran's face never changed. His eyes never left the far wall. And then the white glove was back at his side, and the bearskin was still, and the star was standing exactly where he had started, blinking, with the curious expression of a man who has missed a step in the dark. Nobody clapped. The room did not understand yet what it had seen. It looked to most of them like the star had shoved a statue and lost his footing, and the statue had been kind enough to keep him from a bruise. Which is, in a way, precisely what happened. But the men in that room who knew, the old soldier by the fireplace who had gone very still, the retired officer near the doors, those men had seen the whole grammar of it, the yield and the slide and the catch. And I watched the old soldier set down his glass without looking at it, his eyes never leaving Halloran. The star recovered the only way his kind knows how. He laughed too loud. "Slippery floor," he said, brushing his sleeve where Halloran had steadied him, brushing it as if the touch had dirtied it. You all saw slippery floor. But there was a thing in his face now that had not been there before, a crack of doubt running under the bravado, because some animal part of him had felt what his pride would not yet let him name. He had committed his whole weight to a shove, and the shove had gone nowhere, had been folded up and handed back to him so gently that he had not even fallen. Men who fight for a living know in their bodies when they have touched something they do not understand. The star knew. He just could not afford to know it yet. So he did the thing that pride does. He doubled down. "All right," he said, raising his voice again, gathering the room back to him. "All right, the floor, fine, but you want to talk about real." He was pointing at Halloran now, jabbing the air. "I'll make it simple. I'll give 100,000 to your little veterans fund, 100,000 right now, tonight, if this man can do one thing. One. He steps off that wall and we go a single round, light contact, controlled, and he keeps me from putting him on the ground for 1 minute." He turned to the crowd, arms wide, the showman certain of his stage. 1 minute. And if he can't, when he can't, everyone in this room admits the discipline is exactly what I said it is. Set dressing. A coat on a hook. The publicist's smile was a rictus now. The crew's cameras swung to find Halloran, and I felt the floor of the evening tilt under all of us, because the star had just done the one thing that could pull Halloran off that wall, and he had no idea he had done it. He had not challenged Halloran's pride. Halloran had no pride left to bait. He had buried it years ago in a cold hall above a hardware shop. What the star had done was put 100,000 pounds on a table in front of a room full of men who had given their lungs and their backs to a country that had given them a thin pension and a thank you. The star had made the veterans fund the prize. And the man on the wall had spent his whole disciplined life learning that there are some things you step off a post for, and some things you do not, and the trick is knowing the difference. I saw Halloran's eyes move. For the first time all night, they left the far wall and found me. It was not a plea, and it was not a question exactly. It was the look two men give each other when they have stood a long time on the same cold ground and do not need words anymore. It said, "You know what this is." It said, "You know what I am, and you know what's on the table, and you know I cannot reach for it from here." And it said the thing under all of it, the thing 4 years had built between us. Tell me I'm allowed. A sentry cannot leave his post. That is the iron of it, the thing the whole ceremony rests on. But a sentry can be relieved. There is a difference, and the difference was the only door open to us, and I was the senior man at that post. I will tell you what went through me in that second because I have thought about it since. I thought, this is a circus, and we do not perform in circuses. I thought, the regiment would rather lose 100,000 than be a man's evening's entertainment. I thought about the duty officer, Captain Aldi's, and what he would say. And then I thought about the old soldier by the fireplace who had set down his glass and the thin pensions and the lungs, and I thought about the fact that I knew, I, alone in that room of 300 knew, that what the star was calling a circus was about to become the cleanest demonstration of discipline any of those guests would ever see in their lives. Not violence. Discipline. The thing the gala existed to celebrate, made real for 1 minute on the waxed marble. I caught Captain Aldi's eye across the hall. He had come to the edge of the crowd. He had heard the wager. His face was the careful blank of an officer doing arithmetic at speed. I gave him the smallest tilt of my head toward Halloran, and a look I hoped carried 4 years of trusting the man beside me. Aldi's is a good officer. He held my eyes for a long moment, and then, and I will love him for this as long as I live, he gave one short nod and stepped forward into the light. "The Founders' Gala thanks the gentleman for his generosity," Captain Aldi said, and his voice cut the room's chatter clean. "The Veterans Fund will gladly accept 100,000 pounds. The corporal will require relief from his post before he can accept any private engagement. Sergeant Vane." "Sir," I said. "Relieve Corporal Halloran." It is a small ceremony, the relief of a sentry, and we did it the way we do it on the cold mornings when no one is watching, which is the only way we know how to do it. I stepped from my place. I came to Halloran. We exchanged the words low that marked the handing over of a post. He brought his rifle to the slope and I took the wall in his place, and the moment my heels met the marble the post was mine and the man was free, and for the first time in 2 hours Ren Halloran was not a statue. He was just a man in a red coat, and he turned, and he walked out into the open floor where the star was waiting. The crowd made the sound a crowd makes when it gets what it wanted, and is a little frightened of it. "He's actually going to do it," the star said, delighted, already playing to his cameras. He shrugged out of his dinner jacket and handed it to the publicist without looking, the way rich men hand things to people. Underneath he was built, no question, the gym, the trainers, the films had made him a genuinely strong man, and he moved like someone who had drilled the choreography of fighting until it lived in his hips. He rolled his neck. He bounced on his toes. He was, I will give him this, not entirely a fraud. He had real attributes and real strength and the kind of confidence that comes from 100 rehearsed victories. What he did not have, what he could not have, was 15 years of the cold hall above the hardware shop. "Rules," the star announced, circling. 1 minute. "Light contact, like I said, I'm not going to hurt the man, this is a charity thing. He just has to keep his feet. He goes down, I win, and we all stop pretending." He grinned at Halloran. "Last chance to stay a statue, big man. Lot less embarrassing." Halloran said nothing. He took off his bearskin, set it down with both hands, careful as you would set down a sleeping cat, on the chair an attendant brought, and the room got its first real look at him without it. Cropped hair going gray at the edges. A face you would pass on the street. He unbuttoned the wool tunic's collar by exactly one button, not for vanity, I knew, but because a man who has fought knows where his breath lives. He set his feet. And the change that came over him I can only describe as a settling, the way a level finds true, the way water finds the bottom of a bowl. The slope of his shoulders dropped a half-inch. His hands hung open and easy. He did not raise a guard. He stood the way he had stood all night, relaxed, centered, eyes level, except now there was a man in front of him, and the stillness that had looked like ceremony revealed itself, to anyone who could read it, as something else entirely. The old soldier by the fireplace murmured something to the man beside him. I found out later what it was. He said, "Watch his hips, not his hands, his hips." He had seen it too. Someone, the publicist, of all people, desperate to control a thing already out of control, called the minute. A guest held up a phone with a timer. "Go," somebody said. The star came in. He came in well, I will not lie to you. He led with a feint, a half step and a shoulder drop to draw a reaction, then changed levels and shot for the body, a tackle, a takedown, exactly the thing his films had taught him would put a man down dramatically. It was fast and it was strong, and against 99 men in that room it would have worked. It did not even slightly work. Halloran was not where the tackle arrived. He had not jumped back. Jumping back is panic, and it loses you the ground. He had turned, a small economical pivot off the line of the charge, his hips doing the thing the old soldier had told the room to watch, and the star's tackle closed on the place Halloran had been a quarter-second before. And as the star drove through that empty space, off balance now, all his weight committed forward, Halloran's open hands found him, light, guiding, never gripping hard, and helped him go exactly where his own momentum was already taking him. Down and around and onto the marble, turned at the last instant so that he landed not on his face, not hard, but rolled onto his back, settled there almost gently, like a man laid down by a wave. The whole room drew one breath. Halloran was already standing over him, hands open, not a fist made, not a knee dropped, nothing of the brutality the star's films were built on. He simply stood, having put a man down without a blow, and offered, I swear it, in front of 300 people, offered his white-gloved hand to help the star up. The star did not take it. He scrambled up on his own, red in the face now, the showman's grin gone hard. "Lucky," he said. "I slipped, that's twice now your floor." But the room had felt the lie of it this time. You can sell a stumble once. You cannot sell it after a man has read your tackle, removed himself from it, and laid you on your back like folding a sheet. The cameras had it. The phones had it. And somewhere in the crowd a voice, young, awed, said the thing the whole room was thinking but had not dared. He didn't even hit him. The minute was at 40 seconds. The star had 20 seconds left to put Ren Halloran on the ground, and 100,000 pounds and his whole gleaming reputation riding on it, and the worst possible thing had just happened to him. He had started to be afraid. I had seen that exact fear before, on the faces of men in gyms who had walked up to Halloran thinking the red coat was a costume. It is a specific fear, and it has nothing to do with pain. It is the fear of a man who has just discovered that the rules he has lived by do not apply here, that his strength, which has always been the answer, is the very thing being used against him, and that the more he commits, the harder he falls. It is the fear of throwing punches into deep water. The star did the thing fear does to a proud man. He abandoned technique and reached for power. He came in again, no feint this time, just a bull rush, head down, arms wide, all that gym-built weight thrown at Halloran to bear him over by sheer mass, the thing that works in films because the films are written so it works. And Halloran, for the first time, closed the distance instead of opening it. I want to be precise about what happened, because it is the whole heart of why I am telling you this story, and because the slow footage has been argued over by men who fight for a living, and they all come to the same word for it. The word is mercy. When the star rushed, Halloran stepped into him, under the wide arms, to the place where a charging man is most off balance and least dangerous, the place you can only find if you have spent 15 years learning where it is. He let the star's chest meet his shoulder. He took one fistful of the star's shirt, not the throat, not the hair, the shirt, and he turned his hips one more time, that same small economical turn, and the star's own forward charge became a slow circle, a thing almost like a dance, and Halloran rode him down to the marble a second time. But this time he went down with him. He did not stand back and let the man fall. He cradled the star's descent the whole way, one gloved hand spread flat between the man's shoulder blades and the marble, so that the star, who weighed what he weighed, who had thrown himself with everything, landed on the hard floor as softly as a man lying down to sleep. And then Halloran simply held him there. Not with violence. There was no lock, no choke, none of the joint-cranking ugliness the films are built on. He held the star pinned by the geometry of leverage alone, a knee placed, a hand placed, his weight distributed exactly so the star could not rise no matter how he heaved. And the star did heave, twice, 3 times with everything he had, the cord standing out on his neck, and it did nothing at all. He could not move the man on top of him by even an inch. And Halloran's face, 6 inches above his, was not triumphant. It was calm. It was almost kind. It was the face of a man holding a door shut against the wind, doing a necessary thing without any feeling about it. The timer ran out. Time, the publicist said, and her voice cracked on the word. Halloran let him go at once, stood. Stepped back, hands open, giving the star all the room in the world to get up with whatever dignity he could find. And the room, 300 people, the old soldiers, the donors, the crew with their cameras, the room had gone completely silent, the kind of silence that is not the absence of sound but the presence of something everyone is feeling at the same time and no one knows how to name. The star got up slowly. His shirt was rumpled, his hair was wrong, and there was not a mark on him, not a scratch, not a bruise, nothing. That was the thing that undid the room. A man had been put down twice, hard, by a stronger-looking opponent in front of all of them, and he was completely unharmed, and the absence of any injury said more than any injury could have. Cruelty would have let the star save face. He could have been the brave loser, bloodied but unbowed. Mercy left him nowhere to stand. He had been controlled, that is the only word, controlled as gently and completely as a grown man controls a furious toddler, set down and held and let go, untouched, like something a careful man did not wish to break. He knew it. I watched him know it. The bravado drained out of his face, and something younger and more honest came up underneath. And for a moment the star was not a wattage at all, but a man who had just learned something true about himself in front of everyone he had been performing for. It was the old soldier by the fireplace who broke the silence. He did not clap. He stood slowly on a bad hip, with the help of the mantle, and he came across the floor, and he stopped in front of Ren Halloran, and he looked at him with an expression I can only call recognition. "Where did you train, son?" the old man asked, his voice carried in the silence. Halloran was quiet for a moment. I thought he might not answer. Then he said simply, "A hall above a hardware shop, sir, a long time ago." "No," the old soldier said. "After that, where did it go after that?" He was not going to be put off. "I refereed combatives for 30 years. I know what I just watched. That wasn't a hobby. A man doesn't yield off the line like that and ride a charge down and cradle the head on the way to the floor unless he's done it 10,000 times against men who were trying to take his off. I've only seen that turn, that exact turn, at one level." He paused. "What was your weight?" And the star, standing forgotten now, said in a strange flat voice, the voice of a man reading a sign he should have read an hour ago, "He's a champion, isn't he? He's an actual—" He stopped. He looked at the unbruised backs of his own hands. I came up to a real one. I came up to a real one and called him fake. Captain Aldi's stepped in then, gently, because Aldi's is gentle when it costs nothing and iron when it costs everything. Corporal Halloran's record is his own to share or to keep, he said. He has kept it by choice for as long as I have known him. I will say only this. He turned to the room. He represented this country abroad. He stood at the very top of his sport more than once, and then he set it all down to do this. Aldi's gestured at the bearskin on the chair, at the post, at the whole quiet apparatus of standing still, because he wanted to learn the harder discipline, the one with no medal, the one nobody films. Aldi's looked at the star, not unkindly. You called it set dressing, sir. What you met tonight was the most dangerous man in this room choosing, for years, to be the stillest. The old soldier put out his hand. Halloran took it. The two of them shook, champion and referee, and something passed between them that had no need of the rest of us, and the old man said, low, just for Halloran, but I was close enough to hear it. I saw the flag go up for a man your size 15 years ago. I've wondered ever since what happened to him. He held Halloran's hand a beat longer. Now I know. He grew up. Good for you, son. Good for you. That was when the room finally made its sound. Not the laugh the star had farmed for, not the gasp of the takedown. It started with the old soldiers, the ones by the fireplace, the ones with the lungs and the pensions and the thin thank yous. They began to applaud, and it spread, and it built, and it filled the long hall to the chandeliers. 300 people on their feet for a man who had not thrown a single blow. Halloran did not bask in it. I had known he would not. He picked up his bearskin from the chair, both hands careful, and he buttoned his collar back to true, and he stood there with the applause breaking over him like surf over a rock that has been in the same place for 1,000 years. He gave the room one short bow of the head, not for himself, I think, but for them, the way you acknowledge a kindness you did not ask for and cannot return. Then he looked for me. Found me on the wall, and in his eyes was the only thing he had wanted out of the entire night, a question. May I come back to my post now? I have never wanted to give a man anything more. But the star was not finished, and to his lasting credit, what he did next was not what I expected. I had braced for him to slink off, or to spin it, or to find a camera and rebuild himself out of words the way his kind always can. Instead, he crossed the floor to Halloran through the noise, and the room hushed again to watch, and he stopped in front of the man he had shoved twice and called a coat hanger, and he did a thing that cost him everything a man like that has. He put out his hand. I owe you an apology, the star said. He said it loudly on purpose so the cameras would catch it, but I do not think the loudness was vanity this time. I think he had finally understood that the only way to undo a public insult is a public apology, and he had the decency to pay the full price of it. In front of everyone. I came in here and I called your discipline fake. I called you set dressing. He swallowed. I do my own stunts and I've taken hits, and I told myself that made me real. And then a man stood still all night, and I shoved him twice because I needed him to be a fraud, and he, the star, shook his head, and something raw came into his voice. He caught me. Twice. He could have broken me in front of all of you, and instead he caught me so I wouldn't even bruise. I have never in my life been beaten like that. Gently, that's the thing I can't get past. You beat me gently. Halloran took his hand. He did not make him grovel. That too is the discipline. A lesser man, a man who still had pride to feed, would have let the star hang there a beat to enjoy it. Halloran took the hand at once, firm and brief, and said the first full sentence he had spoken to the star all night. You've got real attributes, he said. You're strong and you're fast and you commit. That's not nothing. A pause. You've just never had to learn what to do when strength isn't the answer. Most men never do. It's not a shame to find out. The star laughed, a different laugh than the one from the start of the night, smaller, more human. Will you teach me? He said, half a joke, half not. No, Halloran said, and there was the faintest warmth at the corner of it. But the hall above the hardware shop is still there. There's a coach who smells of liniment and won't let you quit. Go to him. Tell him a statue sent you. And the room laughed, the warm laugh now, the whole room together, and the thing that had started in cruelty an hour before had been turned, gently, completely, without a blow, into something none of us would forget. The star kept his word about the money, and then some. Before he left that night, he found Captain Aldi's and made the 100,200, and a week later his people sent word that he wanted to fund the Veterans Fund's respiratory clinic outright, the one for the old soldiers with the bad lungs, the project that had been 3 years short of money, and he wanted it done quietly, no cameras, his name nowhere on it. Aldi's told him the donors usually liked their names on things. The star said he had had enough of his name for a while. I believe that was the truest thing he said all night. As for the footage, it went where footage goes. The crew's cameras and 100 phones, and within 2 days the country had watched a famous fighting film star get laid gently onto a marble floor twice by a motionless palace guard who never made a fist. But the strange thing, the thing I am proudest of, is what the country took from it. It was not a story about a celebrity humiliated. The clips that traveled were not the takedowns. The clip that traveled, the one that went everywhere, was the catch, the first one. The slow footage of a white glove coming up to steady a falling man, that grip like a father on the ice. People watched it over and over. He didn't even hit him, they said, the way the odd young voice had said it in the room. He caught him. As if they had been waiting a long time to be shown that the strongest thing a powerful man can do is choose not to use it. Halloran came back to his post that night. I relieved him of the relief, if you want to call it that, handed him back the wall, took my own place beside it, and within a minute the two of us were statues again, eyes level, the gala flowing past us like a river around 2 posts sunk in the bed. You would never have known. A man could have walked into that colonnade at the end of the night and seen nothing but ceremony, 2 still soldiers in red and black, set dressing, a coat on a hook. That is the part the star never understood until it was done to him, and the part I have spent 4 years learning, and the part I most wanted you to have. The stillness was never the absence of the fighting. The stillness was the fighting one. Every morning Ren Halloran stands on that wall and chooses, all over again, not to be the most dangerous man in the room, chooses it freely, the way only a man who could be otherwise can choose it. The medal in the box his mother keeps is for what he could do. The red coat is for what he doesn't. I asked him much later on another sleepless night over the bad coffee, whether it had bothered him, the shove, the names, the coat hanger in the hat. He thought about it a while, the way he thinks about everything. For 1 second, he said, when the second shove came I thought I could end this. I've still got it. I felt how easy it would be. He turned his coffee in his hands. And then I thought that's exactly the man I left the mat so I wouldn't become. The one who can only fight, the one who gets mean when he can't. He looked up at me and he almost smiled. So I caught him instead. The medal taught me how to put a man down, Tomas. The wall taught me how to put him down kindly. The wall's the harder one. Took me longer to win. We finished the coffee. We went back to our posts in the morning dark. And somewhere across the Capitol, in a hall above a hardware shop, a coach who smells of liniment was, I would like to think, teaching a famous man how to fall.